On to get through some notes today. All right, we got to get through some notes. You ready? Get loosened up, ready to write. Okay. All right. So we did force theory, evolutionary theory. We did divine right and social contract theories. And we did an in-depth look at social contracts. Yes. I guess I should talk about Rousseau for a minute. Dang it. Oh yeah, let's talk about Rousseau for a minute. I know. All right. So Rousseau. Guys, he's Swiss, right? I like his stuff on education about, how like when you're learning something, if you actually do it, like physically do it, kinesthetically, you tend to remember it better, okay? Which, that makes sense. It's hard to do in a history class. I've really tried, there'll be one exercise that we do when we learn the amendments that I'll get you kinesthetically involved, okay? Other than that, this is what we're doing. Okay, or showing a video, right? So anyhow, he believes in this idea of what? Direct democracy, yes? And he talks about how life in a state of nature was wonderful until what? What? We own things, yeah, private property, right? That's the root of all evil is private property. Then people have envy of each other, right? And so forth, and that leads to conflict and so forth. So he says that people need to be forced to be free. Did he say that? Yeah. That's Rousseau?
Even if they don't realize it.
Even if they don't realize it, okay?
I don't know if that's necessarily, like, if you're forcing them to be really free. Like, I don't know if that's. I mean, if you don't have private property.
Yeah, there's some of that in here, yeah. Guys, I don't know if you ever think about this, when we talk, I kind of brought it up in history class last semester when we talked about, Iraq and Afghanistan, how these people have always been ruled. They don't know how to live free on their own. They don't know how to do it themselves. They're always been told what to do. Ruled over. And so I don't know if there's any aspect of any holdover with this, but he has definitely got an interesting take here. And the idea of direct democracy, okay, I just kind of make this clear. Our founders did study Rousseau, okay, and the last class I talked about the French Revolution, okay. Rousseau's ideology, his philosophy here, is an inspiration for the French Revolution, okay. Now, he's got some other stuff in here. You got no private property, okay, and you need to force people to be free. I've often wondered, there's somebody that came up with a different philosophy years after this that may have studied Rousseau. Did anybody see a connection with another philosopher that came along in the 1800s? Yeah, Karl Marx. And so I've looked this up. And was Marx a disciple of Rousseau? And he does mention Rousseau in some of his writings, Marx does, okay? But so do a lot of other people, okay? But there's a similarity here. And when you talk about Marxism, okay, it is the people. I mean, this is direct democracy, right? Where the people have a say over everything that happens. In Marxism, the people are all equal. They all have an equality of say, of property. They all share in common. It's similar, okay? The founders of this country referred to direct democracy, many of them, as mobocracy. When people get emotional, and we know they do, they tend to act irrationally. And when people get angry and act irrationally, you get a mob. The American Revolution was fought against the British. Were the Sons of Liberty at times acting as a mob? Absolutely. Okay? But in the end, what we have is a war, a traditional war. where you're trying to defeat the other side. In the French Revolution, they were fighting against each other. There's class warfare involved in the French Revolution. You understand class warfare and Marxism? Okay? It has all the makings of a very bloody situation, and that's what we got in the French Revolution. This inspired it. Okay? So, be careful what you wish for. This country, which started out as a republic, okay, and you hear our politicians every day get on the television and talk about how we live in a democracy, making the uneducated people of this country believe that they have a say in every decision in this country, of which they do not. They have a say in who they vote for president. Not really. They're voting for electors, not for the actual candidates, right? This system was set up differently than a democracy. You understand? It has democratic values, no question. But democracy can be very dangerous. If you want mob rule, have at it. Okay? Our founders feared it. All right? So that's what I have to say about Rousseau. All right? Like his stuff on education. It's just a little bit more radical view. Guys, direct democracy cannot work in a large country. We're too uneducated. You know what I mean? People don't have time to become experts on everything. Now, some of you, you're all experts on a lot of stuff. You're the smart people, right? Hopefully you leave here smarter than when you got here. Okay, it's my class, all right? But yeah, I mean, I pay attention. I'm smart. I know what's going on. I know foreign policy pretty well. I know history. I know economics to an extent. Maybe enough to be dangerous. I'm not an expert on everything. And neither are members of Congress. But at least we hope that they have more time to pay attention to public policy than you and I that have jobs or school and other responsibilities. Okay, that's their job, is to become experts in those policy areas. Okay. All right. Next, different forms of government. Okay, we're going to actually be looking at 3 different criteria as forms of government. The first one, so I wouldn't write the second one down yet because you see I got bullet points. Okay, so the first one, we're going to have different forms of government based on geographic distribution of power. Well, what does that mean? Where the power lies in government. Okay, we have 3 types. How many? 3. Okay, the first is unitary. I'm going to do a little infograph on the board to help you understand. Who's the highest elected official in the city of Wichita? Mayor Whipple. Okay. Now that brings a smile to some of the faces of people my generation, because there used to be a TV commercial, a toilet paper TV commercial, Mr. Whipple. Okay. And how soft the tissue was. Okay. He'd like creepily hang out in the grocery store and tell you how soft the toilet paper was. Some of your parents will remember Mr. Whipple. But anyhow, now, what kind of power does the mayor of Wichita have? And what does he have power over? Well, he has to work with the city council. Okay? So, Mayor Longwell, who was the former mayor, before he left office, it was time for Kansas, Wichita, Kansas. We needed a new water treatment plant. The one we have is old. You guys all want to drink good water in Wichita? You want good, clean water you can get out of the tap? I do. I drink tap water all the time. Okay. Now, we need a new water treatment plant. Longwell and the city started taking bids from all over the country for somebody to come in here and build a water treatment plant. This is the largest contract in the history of Wichita, Kansas. $400 million contract to build this water treatment plant. Now, there was this company that came in and said, this is what it costs us to do it. We've done it in this city, this city, this city, this city, and it's been successful in all these cities. And then there was a group of local businessmen that said, we'll put a bid in, we can build it. Although they never built one. Now, it just so happened that Mayor Longwell played golf with some of these guys on the weekends. And guess who got the bid? The local business. Okay. Well, this got into the Wichita Eagle, and they wrote all about it. And everybody saw this is graph. They saw Longwell giving this huge contract to his buddies. Okay, and they never built a water treatment plant before. Guess what? He lost in the next election. You know what I mean? Like it was just a few months later. And he lost. Okay. The mayor of Wichita has some autonomy. In a unitary system, like in most republics have a unitary system. Britain, Canada, Japan, Israel, Germany, they use unitary systems. Most decisions are made at the national level. So Mayor Khan of London takes his orders from the national government. You following? So the people at the local and state level are merely representatives of the national government administering government at the local level. Does that make sense? Now, we don't use this system. We don't have a unitary system. We are trending in that direction, but we don't use this system. Okay? So that's the first. Do I need to define this for you? Centralized government where all power is in one location. So if we were a unitary system, that would be Washington, D.C. Does that make sense? Usually in their capital. That's where all the power is. Okay? The big unit. Okay? Does anybody know who that is in baseball terms? The big unit. Brody. Randy Johnson. 6'10" left-handed pitcher. Yes, I'm kind of disappointed in you as well. Randy Johnson. 6'10" left-handed pitcher, throws from out here. So if you're a left-handed hitter, that ball is coming at you at 98 miles an hour, and it's starting right at your head. And then it does like that. Very frightening. He's in the Hall of Fame. The big unit. All right, so, all right. The second one that we're going to talk about is a confederal system. You may have heard of it. It's the opposite. It looks like this. Now, to define it, an alliance of independent states. (1781), our first Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. An alliance of independent states joining together for a common goal. What's the common goal in 1781? of the 13 states to defeat Britain. Okay? It was a defensive alliance. Okay? Now, they made this national government so weak that we nearly fell apart after the war. Okay? As we will document in this class. I will talk about that. Okay? It was a disaster. But remember, these people are fighting against the British, of the king and the prime minister just forcing them to buy their tea, taxing them without representation. It was horrible. So when they did a new government, they said, we're not going to give any power to the national government. We fear that. We don't want that. But then it didn't work. Okay? So they had to switch. Other examples of confederal systems. Canada has provinces, right? They're big. And they don't have very many people in them. Their population is small. They have national health care in Canada with a small national government. How do they do that? The states agreed to it. If the provinces didn't agree to it, there would be no national health care. What language do they speak in Quebec? They speak French. The others speak English. Okay? If they had a strong national government, they may mandate that every province, the official language is Canadian English. Okay? So it works for Canada. The European Union is a confederal system. An alliance of states, independent states, joining together for economic purposes, so that the European states can compete against whom? Economically. The U.S., China, right? Now, Britain said, the heck with this, right? They said, we're leaving. Brexit. Okay, you remember hearing about Brexit? Okay, so what started happening with Britain, guys, they're like, this small group of people with the European Union is trying to tell us how we have to run our country. We're like, we're a sovereign nation. You're not going to tell us how to run our country. And they said, we're leaving. And they won't be the first. Watch for Poland. Watch for Hungary. And maybe others. I mean, Germany, because they pull their money together and they all use the euro, and you have countries like Greece and Ireland that are in such debt, in such horrible economic state, that these other countries like Germany, the ones that are doing okay, are having to bail them out. You know what I mean? Like, you're a taxpayer in Germany, like, we're giving all this money to Greece. What's going on? And why is these European Union, these people that we don't even get to elect, telling us how to live our, run our countries? I don't think so. It'd be like the United Nations telling us what to do in the United States. Did I elect any of those people? They have no say over me. You understand? We're a sovereign nation. Our Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not the United Nations. Now, if you want to live in the UN, I guess you can support that. Okay? Some unelected bureaucrat telling us how to run our country for the betterment of the world. That's what I got on that. That's what I got on that. Okay? All right. The third. Not confederal, but federal. Okay? Save the best for last. Okay? Federal system. Or federalism. Okay? Now, check this out. Yeah. So this comes with the new Constitution in 1787, 89, okay, when it's ratified. All right. Federalism. Now I'm going to define this for you, okay? And then I want you to put a star next to it, underline it, highlight it, circle it. Because from here on forward, I reserve the right at any time to ask any of you to define federalism for me. You ready? The sharing or division of power, the sharing or division of power between national, state, and local governments. Between national, state, and local governments. Federalism. So when they wrote the new Constitution, guys, they realized that they needed to give the national government more power than it had. We were too big of a country, too different in different areas of the country, economically, culturally, that we needed a central power that had some authority. But that some powers would be reserved to the state and local governments. Okay? That they would have a say really over things like that affected their day-to-day lives. Big issues decided national government. Like, for instance, can Kansas declare war on Canada? No. Only who can declare war? Only Congress and the national government. You know what I mean? Can Kansas make its own money? We can't coin our own money, okay? Only the national government can do that. So you see what I mean? These are the big things, all right? And so this is what we fight about in this country. We've been fighting over this since 1787 about who gets to say in what we do. Now, this is the Constitution over here, okay? It's an outline of the Constitution. And it delegates certain powers to the national government, okay? And it restricts certain powers to the states. It says states cannot print their own money, okay? States cannot declare war, okay? So this national government has its limits. There's limits to the powers it has. And then those reserved to the states. So one of the things that I like to talk about with this, guys, is education. I'm a teacher, okay? So nowhere in this document, in the whole of the Constitution, is the word education mentioned. So if it's not a power granted to the national government, it's reserved to whom? States and local governments. So we have the Kansas Department of Education, KSDE, and then at the local level, for us, we have, the diocesan office, school office. But for 259, you have the Wichita School Board, which is elected locally, that helps make decisions about how we're going to educate kids in Wichita, Kansas. In 266, they have a school board, how they're going to educate kids in Mays, Kansas. Are there regulations that come from the state government? Yeah, like state assessments, right? Now, I don't know how we did it, guys. It's pretty amazing to me how we did this, but this country survived and thrived from 1776 to 1976, 200 years, without a U.S. Department of Education. I don't know how we did it, but now we have one. Now, if there is nothing in the Constitution about education, why in the world do we have a United States national government Department of Education? It's not in their authority. Yeah, what does the U.S. Department of Education do? Can anybody answer that question? Do you know what their budget is? It's over $50 billion a year. What do? Well, they sit around in the rooms up there at the U.S. Department of Education, and they think of things to tell us what to do at the state level. They give us about 8% of the money to educate people in this country. 8% of the 100% comes from the federal government. And about 95% of the paperwork and bureaucratic crap comes from the national government. See, if you guys work for the U.S. Department of Education, you got to justify your existence. In order to justify your existence, you got to come up with new things for people to do and implement. Even if the things they're doing now work, and you came up with this great idea, say, Common Core, or No Child Left Behind, and passed that on to the states and said, if you want money for education, you'll need to implement this. Which means testing, 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 testing. That's what No Child Left Behind was. They started testing our students to death by federal mandate. Okay? So when I was in D.C. a few years ago, I took this picture. Oh, man, where is it? I tell you guys, I was taking a class. I'm taking a class called Comedy in the Classroom Using Technology. Spent 5 hours on this yesterday. So the top left picture is an original that I took in front of the U.S. Department of Education. Okay, that's the actual picture of me down there. Can you see it in the background? Okay. Then I went on this website and cut myself out. It put me in front of the state capitol in Topeka, and then put me in front of the school here. Okay. So you got national, state, and local. National, state, and local, just like I did here. Okay. And there's your definition. Okay. Is that funny? It's supposed to be funny. That's why I'm taking this class. Okay. So I had to do some photography yesterday too. Okay. So they wanted us to do forced perspective photography and some macro photography. Okay. So yes, like I said, I spent like 5 hours on this yesterday. My wife had bought me these Pez dispensers about 15 years ago, the President's. And I saw some really good forced perspective photography on Google, you know? And so I'm like, okay, I set this up in that's me standing there. Okay. So, you know, it's like close up here, and then I'll be as tall or a little bit taller than these guys and put my arms around. Okay. It didn't work. That's a failed attempt. Okay. But I was able to pull off some stuff here that I think is both funny and education.
I did that at one question.
Oh yeah.
Stuff
Yeah. See, it's getting the desired effect. You're gonna like this
one. Let's see.
5 hours yesterday.
That's awesome.
So hopefully I do well. My class here. Okay. And then this was kind of fun. I'm thinking about doing this like better and just randomly sticking myself into the nose. You know, like I'll hit the switch and you'll see me.
Like you're showing the beach of the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that'll be fun for the class. Okay. But yeah, so I might be using you guys as guinea pigs at some point here for this class. We'll see. It's a 2-hour workshop. I got to do 11 hours of workshop hours to finish my master's. I've taken the big classes, 6 3-hour class, done with those. I just got to do these workshops. So I hope to finish before baseball. It's finished before baseball season. Okay. So anyhow, that's what I was doing. All right. So that's layers, like where the power lies within government. So like the Civil War guys was fought over this, right? I mean, the national government said we're not going to have slavery anymore in this country. And the states, the southern states were like, what are you talking about? You can't tell us that. We're keeping this. And they said, no, you're not. And they said, fine, we're leaving. And they said, you can't leave because the national government has to allow you to leave, and we're not allowing you to leave. And they said, fine, we're leaving anyways, and there's war, right? Yes, slavery was the underlying issue, but so was federalism. I mean, we have these arguments. Just think, could Joe Biden pass an executive order, number 42, and say, everybody in this country has to wear a mask? He can't. He doesn't have the power to. Does Governor Kelly have the power to? She doesn't. It's only the local health board that has that power. That's a local government. Okay? So this is interesting. And guys, the pandemic has shown this more than anything, this federalism. When you look at states like New York and California, guys, that are still shut down in a big way. I mean, California, they're starting to allow some in-person dining, but think about how many people work in the restaurant industry in these states and how they've been affected by that. Since states like Michigan have been just decimated by this. Where in Kansas, we've opened up. You know what I mean? And it's good for our economy. It's good for the workers. You know, that, and if you want to live in a strict state like that with high taxes, you can move there. Or you can leave there. Which is what people are doing. And they're all going to Texas. Texas is blowing up right now. As it did the whole last decade. Okay? Now, I don't want to live there. It's too hot. Texas is hot. And then Houston and Dallas, which is they're enormous cities. The commutes. I mean, if you live there and you live close to your job, like a mile away, probably not too bad. But if you got to commute into the city, it's horrible. You spend half your life in traffic. It's one of the great things about Wichita, man. All right, we're moving on. Okay. All right, so we're looking at different forms of government. Now, this is the second one, okay? Based on the number of people that can participate in government, you might be able to tell where I'm going with this. Like, if only one person gets to participate in government, we know what we're looking at, right? What are we looking at? A dictatorship, okay? So, yeah, that's the first thing we're going to write down here. First bullet point, dictatorship, okay? Now, this can be a bit confusing for people because when people think of dictatorship, they think of dictator, one person. But a dictatorship can be one person or it can be a few. Let me define it for you, okay? Those who rule do not follow the will of the people. Those who rule do not follow the will of the people. That's a dictatorship, okay? Now, because we're smart people, let's list some different types of dictatorships. Anyway, think divine right. Monarchies, yeah, sure. Monarchies.
I read that comment on one of the other things.
What's that?
Oligarchy.
Oligarchy. What would you describe Castro's Cuba or Saddam Hussein's Iraq or Kim Jong-un's North Korea? These guys, if you ever see pictures of them, they're generally wearing what? Military uniform. Military dictatorship. Think Iran, which is called a Vatican City. Theocracy. It's okay. That's why we're here. Okay, now, you can, some of these like describe dictatorships and some are like actual dictatorships, right? So like monarchy is usually autocracy, right? Auto being what? Right, yeah, one. So an autocrat is a single ruler. So, you know, military dictatorship could be an autocrat, okay? Theocracy could be a group of religious leaders with the Pope. He's an autocrat. He does have cardinals, right, that advise him and stuff. Does he take advice from the cardinals or only from God? I don't know. I'm asking. Does anybody know?
Probably take advice.
Okay. You guys are the Catholic ones. You've been in Catholic school your whole life. You know that.
Catholic school my whole life.
Yes, he takes advice from cardinals.
Thank you very much, Ethan. He is not an autocrat. I don't think, anyways. Maybe he is. Okay. He's got the final say, though, right? All right. All right, so let's talk about an oligarchy. Okay, monarchy, how do you become a monarch? Yeah, you're hereditary, right? Okay. Now, there are constitutional monarchies that are different, okay? So we'll talk about those later, okay? Because it's not a dictatorship. Oligarchy is rule by a few. And Henry, maybe you can help me out here a lot. Because I like to talk about China on this, okay? Because China, they have presidents. President Xi, right? Is that how it's Xi? And just 2 years ago, I think, he was elected president for life. Okay? Which he's the first Chinese dictator to be chosen leader for life since Mao, I believe. Okay? Mao was the original leader of communist China. Okay? Now you notice communism isn't up here. Communism is an economic theory as a form of government, which is the next big one. Does that make sense? Okay, but China is an oligarchy. So the Communist Party in China rules, correct? Like, so if you have 1.3 billion people in China, now correct me if I'm wrong, less than 1% of the 1.3 billion people are actually have membership in the party. Is that correct? You don't know? Do you know if your family, like, I don't mean to put you on the spot, they're not members? Okay. So when we went to China to adopt Lily, we had 13 families that went with us from Texas, all over the country, okay? And one of the ladies that was adopting was Chinese. She had come to school here in the States, graduated, met an American man, got married, okay? But her father, who still lives in China, is a member of the Communist Party. So, like, while we were there, she, like, said, I'll be back in a couple days. I'm going to go see my dad. Which I think had been quite a while since she's seen her dad. But having membership in the party has its privileges. Okay? And they elect. The party elects the leader. Okay, so it's ruled by few. Now, the fact that Xi has been named ruler for life gives him more power than normally the leader of China would have. Do you understand? Because now, I mean, his wife, from what I understand, she's very popular as well. They're both very popular in China. Okay, and so they're a very powerful couple. All right, which could make them more dangerous, or if he wanted to, implement reforms, knowing that he's for life, he might have the ability to implement some reforms. Okay, it just depends. Okay, so the Soviet Union was the same way. Now Stalin, when he came to power, he was like, I'm the man, and I'm not leaving. And if you threaten my power, well, you're dead. I mean, he had purges. You know what I mean? He would kill those around. I mean, people that were his friends that helped him come to power. Hitler did the same thing. The Night of Long Knives. I mean, just like took out all these people that he thought might be a threat. Okay, Stalin was notorious for that. But generally, after Stalin, you got Khrushchev, and then you got a bunch of different ones, okay? And that's because the Communist Party got to choose the leader. Okay, that's an oligarchy, okay? Castro was a autocrat. Nobody was taking his power. Kim Jong-un is an autocrat. He's a military dictator. You're not taking away power from him unless there's a war. You know what I mean? He's assassinated or something, okay? Theocracies are very rare in the world today. I mentioned really the only two that I'm really aware of are Iran and the Vatican. Okay, now Iran is ruled by the Ayatollah, okay, but he has people that advise him that are like religious clerics, the imams that advise him, but it is a religious state. Now, the Islamic State, ISIS, you've heard ISIS, that's a caliphate, and that would be a theocracy as well, although it was not recognized by any country on the planet as a legitimate government. Okay, so what else we got here? Now, all of these share in common this. All of these dictatorships are authoritarian. Write that down. Authoritarian. 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 Okay, so with authoritarian, power is absolute and unchangeable. All dictatorships share authoritarian principles. Okay. Now, some of these dictatorships could be described as totalitarian. When you think of totalitarian, you think of ruling with an iron fist, controlling every aspect of life through force. Nazi Germany, totalitarian. North Korea today, totalitarian. Rule through force, every aspect of life. Mussolini, somewhat. Italy under Mussolini, somewhat. Now, I struggle with China, okay, because China, you know, that you don't have the religious liberty, you don't have the free speech, you know, being critical of the government is dangerous, so you live in fear of that. But economically in China, it's not totalitarian. Okay, so I struggle with that, whether to call China totalitarian. In some ways they are, some ways they're not. Okay, Myanmar today, which is formerly known as Burma, has one of the strictest governments on the earth right now. Now, they went through a period where there were some reforms. When Obama was in office, there was a woman that kind of came to power there, tried to, you know, make things better there, but I think they've gone backwards since then. But yeah, you think North Korea here, Nazi Germany, okay, for totalitarian, all right? So dictatorships. Now, one I don't have up here, like I said, fascist or communist, okay? Fascism could possibly fit up here as an economic system. It's kind of more of an economic system than it is a political system, like communism, okay? But usually fascist governments tend to be dictatorial. Not always, okay? That went way too fast, guys. All right, next thing we talk about when we're talking about the number of people will be democracy and different forms of democracy. That'll come in the lecture. And then we will look at those economic forms of government, okay, economic systems as forms of government. That'll be fun. All right, guys. Have a good day.